Welcome to another episode of OKOGA Live. I'm Chad Warmington, President of the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association. I've got a great guest with me this week, Tim Baker, who's the Director of the Oil and Gas Conservation Division. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I think we got a number of topics I wanted to cover with you, but I think we'll maybe start out with if you could just kind of tell some people who don't know, what does the Oil and Gas Conservation Division do? And then we'll kind of get into some of the more maybe detailed areas that are particular focus to us. I know you've been spending a lot of time on, so I'll just kind of throw it to you.
Right. Well, the Oklahoma Conservation Division is a division of the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, and we regulate the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma. We have exclusive jurisdiction in the oil and gas industry and regulating the oil and gas industry with the possible exception of air. Other than that, we regulate the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma.
Yeah. So for our business, the people in your division and you are a big important part of our regulatory environment. Mostly everything we do at the state level really goes through your division, and so it's a great working relationship, and that's been the history of Oklahoma. And the oil and gas industry has had that really strong relationship with the regulatory side of the state, and I think that's something that a lot of states look to us as a model, I think.
I think so too.
Good.
So.
Well, so the issue that we've been dealing with, taking up a lot of time, as a lot of our viewers will know, is seismicity in the state of Oklahoma. And I wanted to have you on to talk about kind of a general update of where we are overall with seismicity, and then really talk about kind of there's a couple different types of seismicity that you and the team have been working on. So I wonder if you could just give us kind of a big picture update,
Sure.
and then let's talk about kind of how we got where we are. I mean, you all had to get your arms around an issue that you weren't expecting to have to deal with, create a division and create a regulatory scheme. So I want to talk about that as well. But just give us an update of where we are overall with seismic activity in the state.
Okay. Well, if you live in Oklahoma, most of you know, we've been having a number of earthquakes that far exceed what our background level is. In 2015, for example, we had a record number, over 900 felt earthquakes in Oklahoma, and our background in a normal year would have been about 2. So obviously there was something going on. It took us a long time, or not a long time, it took us quite some time to get enough data together to figure out what the relationship was, what was going on. As most of you know now, we have been able to correlate the larger earthquakes, most of the ones Oklahomans have felt, with what we call deep well disposal. We have a formation in Oklahoma called the Arbuckle Formation. It's the deepest sedimentary deposit in Oklahoma. It's over 1,000 feet thick. It's very porous, very permeable, and from an environmental standpoint, it was the safest formation to dispose of your fluids. Well, as horizontal drilling progressed, we started seeing these large volumes of water being disposed into the Arbuckle. And what has happened that we've never seen before is that we had all these operators putting all of their water in the same formation at the same time. Consequently, what we figured out was that buildup of pressure from all those wells had a cumulative effect on the larger faults, the deeper faults in Oklahoma, causing them to slip, which was creating the earthquakes. We came out with some protocols, several protocols. We began reducing those volumes over a broad area, about 15,000 square miles to be more exact. And as we did that, we saw the earthquakes beginning to decline. So we now have a fairly good understanding of the volumes of water in deep wells being disposed in the Arbuckle and the larger earthquakes that we've felt. About 18 months ago, we started seeing some earthquake activity that was outside of our area of interest. We did not have any deep well disposal, and so we had to investigate further on what we thought that relationship might be. We took all of the data that we had from Frac Focus. If you're familiar with Frac Focus, anyone who fracks a well reports their volumes and their constituents on Frac Focus. We compared that Frac Focus data with our earthquake data, and we started seeing a correlation between some well completions and earthquake activity. Much lower felt earthquakes, but in the end we did see earthquake activity associated with some well completions. So we started looking at that and seeing how we could manage that, bringing in industry, bringing in the experts who were also seeing a correlation. And that's when we came up with our first protocol.
Was that about a year ago? Was that?
December of 16.
Okay. And that was on the specific related to the earthquakes that were not associated with disposal wells. This was that directive, and that was just about a year ago, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And then this week, and you said at the time too, and I think that's one of the things that the commission has been really consistent about. These are going to be evergreen in the sense of they're always going to be updated. You're always looking at data. You're going to always be looking to make sure you're measuring, the response. And if you're getting a good response, great. And if you're not, you're going to continue to change the regulations and adapt them. And that's what happened this week. You had the second version come out, and I think from an operator's perspective, for those who are watching, I think there's some good guidance in there. And so tell us a little bit about the process of learning, kind of where you were a year ago to where you are now, what you've learned, and what you're trying to give guidance to operators on, and how you think that these are manageable, and you believe that with these guidelines being followed, they're a lot of easy management, not easy management techniques, but things you can do to keep them from growing in size.
That is correct. We had experts come in from industry that have had issues with this before. They showed us what they were doing to help address this issue. And so we do know if an operator who is completing a well in our area of interest, and if they're monitoring the earthquake activity, if they have access to an array where they can start seeing this activity at low levels, and when I say low levels, between the 1.0 and 2.0 range, and they have a plan in place where they can start mitigating their completion operations, there are procedures that we found through experience that will work to help mitigate that earthquake activity and can help keep these earthquakes low enough to where they may not even be felt by surface owners.
Right, and the goal would be obviously, and that's why you lowered the level you want, excuse me, operators to take action, because the goal is to keep them from being felt at the surface, right? There are earthquakes that are associated with their seismic activity with completion operations, with fracking, but they're really low level. The goal is to keep it that low level so you're not felt at the surface, and that's kind of the overarching goal of these directives. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. We universally, it's always been thought that a felt earthquake started at about a 3.0 and above. Well, what we found out, especially with hydraulic fracturing and earthquakes related to well completion, landowners or people on the surface can feel these at least down to a 2.5, if not below that. And we think that's because the earthquakes are occurring at a much shallower depth than in the basement rock. We're still investigating that, but we do know that if an operator will take mitigation practices, when you start seeing these below at 2.5, we've seen pretty high success rate in keeping these below what you would feel on the surface.
And that's the big distinction between the earthquakes that really started Oklahoma on this journey of learning about what was causing them. Is the earthquakes in the northern part of the state, in the Mississippi Lime area, those were much bigger and are harder to manage than these types of earthquakes. And I think that's the real distinction that we've been trying to make, is that this is a different type of seismic activity, and that's why you have different directives as well.
That is correct.
And so the big distinction is, with proper management, you believe that this shouldn't be an issue, and that if prudent operators follow your guidelines, which all prudent operators are going to do, hopefully. Right. If not, they get to come talk to you. Right. That it shouldn't become a bigger issue than that. Is that the goal?
That is the goal. What's different from this guidance from the one that was issued in December is that through the past year and a half, we've seen earthquake activity outside what was previously the 2-kilometer radius. So we've expanded that to 5 kilometers. And we've also seen earthquake activity with people following the previously existing protocol. So we've lowered the action level from a 3.0 to a 2.5, which means if you're really managing it and really trying to stay on top of it, you need to be watching the earthquake activity below a 2.0. So if you start seeing something around a 2.0, you can start changing your completion procedures and start addressing that problem before we get to a 2.5, which we know surface owners can feel at that point.
Yep. And so again, that's the goal of our member companies as well, is making sure that Oklahomans, although they may see the activity, we just don't want them to feel it. And I think with these proper techniques being implemented, we should be able to manage it that way. So these guidelines take effect within 30 days or so.
By April 1st, we hope to have every operator with a management plan, with a mitigation plan, and they can tell us what their mitigation plan is if we ask for it. And so we're giving all the operators until April 1st to have all their plans in place.
Great. One other thing I wanted to touch on, I know you mentioned it in your press release too, you've got a great working relationship with the Oklahoma Geological Survey, and they're your partners. You're the regulator, and they're the research and scientists that help you with understanding the seismic activity. And I know we talked about this, and OKOGA is supportive of Oklahoma continuing to upgrade and invest in its seismic network as well. I mean, that's important for Oklahoma to have it. Operators need to have the ability to either access that or a private array because they got to be paying attention. But just a quick plug for the OGS and the upgrading their capabilities. What would that mean for you and for your team?
Well, absolutely. The Oklahoma Geological Survey, they are the researchers, they are the scientists. They take the data and they interpret the data for us and tell us what this data means. So the Oklahoma Geological Survey is critical for us to be able to do our job. And it's critical for them to have an array out there that can monitor this seismic activity in low enough levels where we can make sure operators are taking action in a timely manner.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Jerry Boak, who runs the Geological Survey, spent a lot of time going around the state, and I think he's done a fantastic job of helping people understand from a seismic perspective what's going on. And then the new state seismologist, Jake Walters, I know is very plugged in with you and your team.
Correct.
And so giving them the tools that they need in order to help continue the research is an important part too. And those are discussions that I think will probably be ongoing about how to get funding. And I didn't want to get out of here without letting you put a plug in too for funding for the Corporation Commission. I know that's a big issue for you, and our friends in the legislature are in Oklahoma City for the next couple of months. I know we're talking to them about getting some more funding. Just kind of give people a sense of these round of budget cuts have really impacted your agency, particularly your division. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
That is true. 70% of the general revenue that comes to the Corporation Commission funds my agency. And like every other state agency, we've seen budget cuts to where my revenue has decreased by 2.6 million a year. So yes, we are looking at fees, something to help supplement the budget cuts that we've seen in the last few years. So that has been my priority the last few years.
No doubt. I think Oklahomans would argue that making sure we properly fund in the regulators who are regulating the state's most important industry is probably a significant priority, and I think we're very supportive of that. I'd like to see something get done either through the fee structure at the commission or some other methods that we could do it. I think the fee structure at the commission is the easiest way to do it, and that's why we're supportive of that. And hopefully in the next week or two you'll get a plan laid out for that. And I'd argue that Oklahomans should want that to happen. You want this division to be properly funded, and frankly, the entire Corporation Commission touches so many of people's lives that you definitely need to have government properly funded to be able to do those tasks.
Can't argue with that.
All right, I'm kind of lobbying for you, which is great. So, but hey, I wanted to thank you for coming on this week. And as always, they can reach out to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. Oklahomans call you often. I know they call our friend Matt Skinner and let him know when they feel things. But that's important to have that information. Get back to you all about things that you see in the field, any oil and gas related activity. Let the Corporation Commission know, and they can help direct you in the proper way to find out how to get it addressed. And then obviously with seismic activity as well. So you guys are responsive. You'll take care of it.
We'll give it the college try.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you all for joining us this week. We appreciate it, and we'll be back soon with another episode.